Margaret Graves did not cry when her parents sold her. She didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't fall to her knees in the mud of Deadwood's back alley market. She simply stared at the man counting coins into her father's trembling palm and thought, "This is the third time I've been traded for a better life. Let's see if I live through this one." They called her the Black Widow of Deadwood. 2 husbands dead in under 3 years. One trampled in a freak wagon accident, the other crushed under a falling timber in the mine. No jury, no trial, but the town had already convicted her in whispers and sideways glances. "Don't look her in the eye," the laundress hissed. "Cursed," the shopkeeper spat. "Men die around her," the saloon girl murmured, crossing herself. Now, in the late autumn of 1883, Deadwood had run out of sympathy and her parents had run out of options. Her mother couldn't meet her gaze. "It's this or starve, Margaret." Her father nodded toward the man waiting by the hitching rail, a narrow-faced trader with pale eyes and a smile that never touched them. "You'll have food, a roof, better than what we can do. Don't you see we're doing this for you?" She looked at the bag of coins. It was for them. The trader, Mr. Tully, gave her a once-over like he was judging a mule's teeth. "Not pretty enough to charge top dollar," he muttered, "but sturdy. She'll do for the mountain buyer." "The what?" Margaret asked, voice flat. Tully smirked. "Lonely mountain man up in the Black Hills. Wants a wife. Don't care about her past, long as she can work and don't talk too much. Men like him don't ask questions. They just pay well." He jerked his chin at the wagon. "Get in." Margaret didn't move. "And if I don't? Then you can stay here," Tully said, voice cold. "Town that thinks you killed both your husbands. See how long before someone decides to finish the curse and hang you for safety." Her father looked away. Her mother began to cry. Margaret stepped up into the wagon. "If I'm cursed," she thought, "then let the curse run its course. I'm done begging anyone to believe me." The wagon rolled out of Deadwood, rattling up into the Black Hills, the town's judgment shrinking behind her. Pines swallowed the road. The sky darkened. Wind sharpened. She wrapped her shawl tighter, but the chill working into her bones had nothing to do with weather. They rode for hours, deeper into the wilderness. Snow dusted the high ridges. The road narrowed and twisted. "Who is he?" Margaret finally asked. "This mountain man." Tully flicked the reins. "Name's Jonas Hale. Trapper, hunter. Occasionally brings pelts to town. Don't say much, don't drink much. Comes down alone, goes back alone. Folks say he's half wild. Might suit you, widow." "Why does he need a wife?" Tully snorted. "Same reason any man does. Cook, clean, warm his bed. He's got a cabin somewhere high up. Pays well. Don't argue. You could do worse." Margaret stared at the dark line of pine trunks. "I already did worse." They turned off the main road onto a rough track hacked through underbrush. The wagon jolted. Branches clawed at the canvas. Hoofbeats echoed strangely in the cold air. Then another sound. A low, distant howl. Margaret glanced back. The last sliver of open road had vanished. Trees pressed in. Dusk fell faster up here. "Wolves?" she asked. Tully didn't answer. They finally reached a small clearing, cut into the slope like a bite taken out of the mountain. A cabin sat at its center. Solid log walls, thick stone chimney, shutters closed tight against the wind. Smoke curled from the chimney. A stack of chopped wood, neat and high, lined one wall. A man stood by the door, waiting. He was tall, broad-shouldered, thick-bearded, coat worn but well-kept. Not old, not young, somewhere in that tired middle where life had already taken its toll. His hair was dark, threaded with early grey at the temples. His eyes were what struck her most, clear, watchful, the color of winter river water. He watched the wagon roll in with the wary stillness of a man used to quiet. "Afternoon, Hale," Tully called, hopping down. "Brought what you paid for." Jonas Hale's gaze shifted to Margaret. It didn't rush, didn't grab. It simply settled. She lifted her chin, determined not to flinch under another man's inspection. He took a slow step forward. You the widow? His voice was low, roughened by disuse and cold air. One of many, she said dryly. Depends who you ask. He studied her face another moment. Then, to Tully, you told her what this is. She knows, Tully said. You asked for a wife. She's it. No refunds. Did she agree? Jonas asked, eyes never leaving Margaret. Tully paused, annoyed. Jonas, we talked about this. This is how it's done. She's got nowhere else to go. You get a wife, she gets a roof. End of story. Jonas's jaw flexed. I asked you a question. Did she say yes? Margaret was suddenly, painfully aware of the weight of his gaze. No one had asked her opinion in months, maybe years. She swallowed. I wasn't given much of a choice. Jonas pulled in a slow breath, eyes hardening. Not at her, she realized, but at Tully. Then he did something no one expected. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small buckskin pouch, and tossed it back to Tully. It jingled when it hit the man's hand. Take your money, Jonas said. I won't buy a woman like a mule. Tully scowled. You already paid. Now I'm unpaying, Jonas said. Deal's broken. Margaret's heart thudded. So what happens to me? Jonas looked at her. Really looked, like he was weighing more than cost. You come inside, get warm, eat, then you decide if you stay or go back with him in the morning. Tully sputtered. She can't just... Jonas turned his head slightly. You still on my land, Tully. You done your part. Brought her. Transactions over. Something in his tone made even the trader shut up. Margaret stared at Jonas. And if I decide to leave, go back to Deadwood? His mouth tugged in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Then I'll hitch up my mule and take you myself. I got no use for a wife who didn't choose me. That word hit her harder than the wind. Choose. No one chose her. People endured her, accused her, traded her. She swallowed again, throat tight. And if I stay, his eyes softened, just barely. Then you'll be my wife, not my servant, not my property. My blessed wife, if the Lord allows. The word blessed sounded strange in the cold air, like a candle lit in a mine shaft. Tully rolled his eyes. Mountain fool, he muttered, climbing back into the wagon. Fine. Freeze up here together for all I care. The wagon rattled away, leaving only the crunch of snow and the slow thrum of Margaret's heart. Jonas motioned to the cabin door. Come inside, Ma'am. Night falls fast up here, and there's something you should know before you decide. She hesitated, then followed him in. If you were in Margaret's place, branded cursed, sold by your own parents, and this mountain man just refused to buy you like livestock, would you stay the night and hear him out, or insist on going back to Deadwood in the morning? Tell me in the comments. Type stay or go back, and why. Pause briefly, then continue the story. The cabin was warm, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and stew. It wasn't large, but everything inside had the look of careful use. Sturdy table, two. Chairs, a narrow bed against the far wall. Shelves with jars of dried beans and herbs. Hooks by the door held a rifle, a hat, and a worn coat. No clutter, no chaos. A life stripped down to work and survival. Jonas motioned to the chair by the fire. Sit. You're half frozen. He ladled stew into a tin bowl and handed it to her without comment, like it was the most natural thing in the world to serve a stranger. She took a cautious sip. Hot, salty, filled with chunks of meat and potato. She hadn't tasted food this rich in months. It almost hurt. He settled into the other chair, elbows on his knees. I'll be plain. I sent word to Tully. I wanted a wife, not this. He nodded toward the door where the wagon had gone. Didn't know he'd treat you like cargo. I'm used to it, she said quietly. Men make arrangements. Women pay for them. He studied the fire. You from Deadwood proper? Yes. Born and raised. She hesitated, then forced the words out. You heard the stories. About me. He nodded once. They say you're cursed, that men die if they stand too close. And what do you say? She asked. I say men in Deadwood talk too much and listen too little, he answered. Accidents happen. Frontier don't care if you're good or bad, innocent or guilty. It just takes what it takes. She exhaled slowly, some of the tightness easing in her chest. My first husband was kind. Foolhardy, maybe, but kind. A horse spooked, the wagon flipped, and she swallowed. Nothing I could do. My second was harder, mean when he drank. But I never wished him dead. I was hanging laundry when the mine beam broke. I heard the news like everyone else. Jonas listened without interrupting. You think I killed them? She demanded suddenly. He met her gaze. I think you're sitting in front of me, half-starved, sold by your own kin. Curses don't do that. People do that. Greedy, scared people. The words hit her like a warm wind after a blizzard. Her fingers trembled around the bowl. He leaned back. I don't want a woman who'll worship me. I don't want a servant who jumps when I shout. I want someone who can stand beside me when the wolves come, four-legged or two-legged. Someone who won't break the first hard winter. You know nothing about me, she said, but there was no heat behind it. I know you survived Deadwood's opinion, he replied. That counts for something. Silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The fire popped. Wind hissed against the shutters. Finally, he said, There's one more thing you ought to know before you decide. Margaret's heartbeat picked up. What? He turned his head, watching the flames. A month ago, I woke up to find wolf tracks circling this cabin, closer than they ought to be. And not just one set, a whole pack moving down from the higher slopes. Something's driving them south. Hunger, maybe. Or something worse. Her fingers tightened on the bowl. You stay here, Jonas went on. You won't just be fighting the cold and the woodpile. You'll be fighting the wild itself. It'll try to take everything that's left of you. And if you really are cursed. His eyes flicked to her. Then this mountain will find out. And if I survive? She asked, pulse loud in her ears. He didn't smile, but something gentler moved behind his eyes. Then the mountain will have to admit it was wrong, same as Deadwood. She looked around the cabin, at the strong walls, the simple bed, the man who had just given away good money, rather than treat her like stock at auction. Suppose I say yes, she whispered. Suppose I choose to stay. What then? Then we'll speak vows, Jonas said quietly. No preacher up here, but God can hear just as well through pine as through stained glass. And I'll call you what I've already decided in my heart. Her breath caught. What's that? He met her eyes. My blessed wife. The word landed like a promise and a dare all at once. Margaret, the Black Widow, blessed. For the first time in months, she let herself imagine something besides survival. A small, defiant life built high in the hills, out of reach of Deadwood's venom. She set the empty bowl down. All right, she said. Let the mountain test me. They married that night by lamplight. No witnesses but the crackling fire and the low moan of the wind. Jonas stood beside her at the small table, hand hovering over hers. You got anything you want me to know, he said. Better say it now. She swallowed. I have night terrors sometimes. I wake up thinking the wagon is flipping again, or the mine's collapsing. I might scream. I might run. I don't mean to. I just do. I thrash when I dream of avalanches, he said simply. We'll just try not to hit each other in our sleep. Her lips twitched despite herself. Fair enough. They spoke simple vows, no flourishes. He promised to protect her as best he could, to share what he had, to ask before taking. She promised to work beside him, to speak truth, to stand with him when fear pressed in from the dark. When it was done, Jonas took a breath, like he was stepping across a line. From this night on, he said, voice low but steady, you are not the Black Widow of Deadwood to me. You're my blessed wife, Margaret Hale. Something behind her ribs cracked and reshaped. He didn't kiss her like a man claiming a prize. He kissed her like a man swearing he'd be there in the morning. For the first time in years, she slept without waking from a nightmare. The mountain did not wait long to test them. Snow came early. One morning, Margaret opened the door to find the world erased in white, drifts already climbing toward the windows. Jonas put an extra axe in her hand. We're behind on wood. This storm's moving fast. You feel your fingers go numb, you stop and go inside. Don't be a hero. Too late, she muttered, hefting the axe. Marrying you was already heroic. They worked side by side, breath steaming, muscles burning. Each swing bit into the logs with clean, efficient rhythm. Jonas watched her out of the corner of his eye as she sank the axe over and over, refusing to be coddled. You keep that up, he said. You'll out-chop me by midwinter. She snorted. If I die, it won't be from laziness. By afternoon, the wind had become a living thing, howling around the cabin, flinging icy needles into their faces. Jonas finally waved her in. We got enough for now. Storm's beating us. Inside, Margaret peeled off frozen gloves, fingers red and stinging. She moved around the cabin with increasing familiarity, adding wood to the fire, checking the pot of beans, mending a torn shirt. Not because he demanded it, but because it was her home now too. That thought still startled her. Night fell early, pressing hard against the shutters. Then came the howls. Not one. Many. Closer than before. Margaret froze, needle halfway through cloth. Jonas set his book down slowly and reached for the rifle. Stay away from the windows, he said quietly. They're testing the walls, seeing what's new on their mountain. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to move. She checked the back shutter. Tight. She checked the latch on the door. Secure. Jonas watched her, approving. The howls rose, braided with snarls and high-pitched yips. Claws scrabbled against the back of the cabin, testing logs. Something bumped the door. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Jonas cocked the rifle. They smell food. And us. They don't know yet which is easier. You can shoot through the shutters? Margaret asked, voice tight. If I have to, he said. But bullets are finite. Walls are forever. They'll circle, push, maybe jump on the roof to scare us. Don't crack. That's all we have to do. Don't crack. She sat on the floor with her back against the bed, arms wrapped around her knees, listening to the pack roam around them. Every time claws scraped, she pictured teeth ripping through wood, through flesh. Jonas, she whispered, if they get in? They won't, he said firmly. But if they do, he stepped over, set the rifle within his reach, and sank down beside her, shoulder to shoulder. If they do, he said, then we fight until we can't, side by side. You're not alone in anything anymore. Do you understand me, Margaret? The words steadied her more than any wall. She leaned her head back, staring at the low rafters. I thought the worst kind of wolves wore boots and hats, she murmured. Turns out they also come with fur. You survived Deadwood, Jonas replied. You can survive this. She believed him. She didn't sleep that night, but dawn eventually seeped through the shutters. The howls drifted away. When Jonas finally opened the door, they found tracks circling the cabin, deep, desperate prints gouged into snow. Claw marks scored the logs. The cabin held. Margaret stood there, breath clouding, looking at the evidence of what had hunted them. Still cursed? Jonas asked quietly. Yes, she said, surprising herself. But maybe not in the way they think. How so? His eyes were intent. Seems any curse meant for me bounces back on whatever tries to kill me, she said, voice gaining strength. Deadwood never broke me. Your wolves didn't either. Jonas looked at her like a man seeing the first green blade after winter. Then maybe you're not cursed. Maybe you're just hard to kill. She smiled, small, sharp. Maybe. Quick question for you. Do you think the real danger for Margaret and Jonas is the wilderness, like the wolves and blizzards, or the people back in Deadwood and whatever they might do if they find her? Comment wilderness or Deadwood, and tell me what you think is the bigger threat. Pause briefly, then continue. Winter, locked in, days blurred into a hard rhythm, chop wood, break ice, tend the snare lines, mend clothes, cook, patch, repair. Jonas taught Margaret how to read the snow, how wind carved it, how animals stepped through it, how thin ice sounded underfoot. He showed her how to set snares properly. The first time she checked one alone, she came back with a rabbit held by the hind legs, cheeks flushed with pride. Looks like the curse doesn't extend to our supper, Jonas said, grinning. Careful, she replied. If you keep calling me blessed, the mountain might get jealous. Some days the silence pressed in on her, memories pushing up from the dark, her first husband's laugh, the smell of coal dust on her second husband's clothes, her mother's face turned away as her father took Tully's coins. Once, in the middle of the night, she jerked awake with a strangled cry. The cabin felt like a mine shaft, the ceiling closing in, timber cracking in her imagination. Margaret. Jonas's voice came through the dark, steady and low. You're not in Deadwood. Hear the wind? Smell the pine? That's our roof creaking, not a beam giving way. Breathe with me. He lay beside her, not touching, just breathing slow and loud enough for her to match. In, out, until her heart calmed. Sorry, she muttered. Didn't mean to wake you. I made vows, he said. They weren't just for daylight. Sometimes she caught him staring into the fire, eyes distant. When she finally asked what he saw there, he hesitated. I had a family once, he said. Brothers, a father. We ran trap lines together, further north. One year the snow came late, then all at once. Avalanche took them, left me. They said I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. How'd you survive? She asked quietly. Same way you did, he said. One breath at a time, one dead winter at a time. They didn't share everything at once, but each story, each scar, braided something between them, stronger than that first lamplight vow. Spring crept down from the peaks at last. Snow melted, turning the creek into a wild, laughing thing. Shoots of green broke through the thawed ground. Margaret knelt to touch them, marveling that something so soft could push through after such a hard season. We made it, she said, astonished. Jonas leaned on his axe. Mountains still got plenty of tricks. Don't get cocky. But he was smiling. They began to talk seriously about the future, planting a small garden behind the cabin, expanding the lean-to into a proper shed, maybe, someday, adding another room. For what? She asked, eyebrow raised. He looked at her steadily. For whoever the Lord sees fit to send us. If he does. Her throat tightened. The idea of bringing a child into a world that had already chewed her up felt dangerous, but also defiant. We'd have to teach them how to outstare a whole town, she said. He nodded. And how to walk quiet in deep snow, and how to smell a storm before it comes, and how to tell the difference between a curse and a lie. Good lessons, she murmured. They were hauling new logs one afternoon, Jonas with the heavier end, Margaret guiding from the back, when the sound of hooves broke across the clearing. They froze. Horsemen, 2 of them, riding into the clearing like they owned the mountain. Dusty hats, long coats, pistols at their hips. The lead rider tugged his horse to a halt and grinned down at the cabin. Well, I'll be, he drawled. Our little black widow went and built herself a nest. Margaret's stomach dropped. Clay Harrow, she whispered. Deadwood's loudest gossip and meanest opportunist. The man who had stared at her across the saloon once and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, any man lies with that woman, he'll be in a coffin by spring. He'd ridden that story harder than any horse. Now he sat on his saddle, pleased with himself. Heard a rumor Tully carted you up this way last fall. Thought I'd ride out and see if the curse took this poor sap yet. He nodded at Jonas. Jonas set his end of the log down, slow and deliberate. You lost, Harrow. No, sir, Clay said. I'm exactly where I mean to be. Town's been mighty nervous, see? Black Widow disappears into the hills, then the wolves start prowling lower. Some folks figure the two might be connected. Never know what a cursed woman might be stirring up. Margaret stepped forward, fists clenched. I stir a pot, Clay, not a pack of wolves. He tipped his hat mockingly. There she is. I came to offer a public service, see? Take you back to town where you can be properly watched. She's my wife, Jonas said, voice low. Your mistake, Clay replied. But the town doesn't feel like dying on your account. His partner laughed. Maybe we should just drag her back, tie a ribbon on her, Hang a warning sign. Jonas moved then, fast and sharp. In 2 strides he was between Margaret and the riders, body relaxed but dangerous as a cocked hammer. You rode onto my land, he said. You brought gossip and guns. You'll leave with nothing. Clay's grin thinned. Careful, mountain man. Deadwood might start thinking you care more about a cursed woman than the safety of good folk. I don't care what Deadwood thinks, Jonas replied. I care what's standing in my yard. You threatening me. Clay's hand floated near his pistol. Jonas didn't blink. I'm stating fact. You try to take my wife off this mountain against her will, you won't make it to the tree line. Margaret stepped up beside him, shoulder brushing his arm. Her voice was steady. If I go back with you, Clay, you know what happens? You get to point at me in the saloon and say you brought the Black Widow home. You get free drinks until someone decides it'd be safer if I met with an accident. You don't want me for safety. You want me for a story. Clay's eyes glittered. Every town needs a story. I'm done being yours, she said. His gaze flicked between them, the cursed widow and the stubborn mountain man standing shoulder to shoulder against him. Mountains changed you, he sneered. Maybe it'll finish the job. He jerked his reins, turning his horse. This isn't done. Town's gonna want answers. You tell town, Jonas called after him, that if they come for my wife, they'd best bring coffins sized for themselves. Clay rode off, laughter trailing behind him like smoke. The mountain grew tense after that. Wolves were bad enough. Men with grudges were worse. Jonas doubled his patrols, circling the cabin at odd hours, scanning tree lines for movement. Margaret kept a pistol near the stove and an axe by the door. She practiced shooting at a notch in a distant pine until she could hit it more often than not. Never thought I'd be jealous of a tree, Jonas remarked, watching another splinter fly. Tree doesn't argue with me, she said. Knows better. Some nights they lay awake, listening, not for howls this time, but for hoofbeats. The attack came at dusk, when the sky was bruised and the first stars were just thinking of showing themselves. Wolves howled again, close, desperate. Jonas's head snapped up from the snare he was repairing. That's wrong, he muttered. What is? Margaret asked, knife pausing over the potatoes she was cutting. They're too close to the horses, he said. They know better than that. Something's driven them in tight. Then, from the trees, the crack of a gunshot. The horse screamed. Jonas was moving before she could even process the sound, grabbing the rifle and lunging for the door. Margaret snatched the pistol and followed. The clearing outside was chaos. The small corral was splintering as the terrified horse reared, blood streaking its flank. Wolves circled, lean with hunger, eyes bright. And beyond them, half-shadowed among the trees, men. Clay Harrow and 2 others, rifles in hand. They'd driven the wolves toward the cabin like living weapons. Jonas, Margaret shouted. Back inside, he barked, leveling his rifle. They're counting on panic. A wolf lunged at the wounded horse, and Jonas fired, dropping it mid-air. The pack scattered, then regrouped. Hunger overriding fear. Clay's voice rang out from the tree line. See, boys? I told you. Curse draws trouble. We're just here to clean up the mess. Another shot slammed into the cabin wall, inches from the doorframe. Jonas ducked back inside, dragging Margaret with him. Get low, he ordered, slamming the door. We're under attack, both kinds. How many bullets? She asked. Enough if we're smart, he said. Not enough if we're stupid. Outside, wolves snarled, and men shouted. The horse went down with a terrible sound. Margaret's hand shook, but she forced it still. What's the plan? Jonas's eyes were very clear, very calm. We let the wolves and the men tear each other apart if they're fool enough to get that close. We protect this door, and we don't panic. She nodded once. All right, let's show them what a curse can do. The next hour stretched like wire about to snap. Shots cracked. Jonas fired only when he had a clean target. Once, Margaret spotted movement near the back window, Clay's partner creeping closer. She took a breath, aimed like she had at the pine tree, and squeezed. He went down with a cry, clutching his leg. Good shot, Jonas said. Bad day to be him. Wolves, drawn by blood and noise, surged toward the wounded man. Clay cursed, firing wildly to drive them back. "This is your fault, Black Widow," he shouted toward the cabin. "Wherever you go, men die." Margaret's voice rang out. Strong. "Men were dying long before I got here, Clay. You just like having someone to blame." The remaining wolves, maddened by fear and hunger, turned on whatever was nearest, flesh, man, or beast. One leapt at Clay's horse, dragging it down. He tumbled free, scrambling. "Fall back," one of the others yelled. "This ain't worth it." Clay fired once more at the cabin, rage shaking his aim, then stumbled toward the trees, wolves snapping at his heels. Jonas tracked him through the scope, breathing slow. Margaret put a hand on his arm. "If you shoot now, you'll kill him clean." He looked at her. "You'd rather he lives?" "I'd rather the mountain decide what happens to him," she said, voice cold. "We've spilled enough blood on other men's terms." He held her gaze a long moment, then lowered the rifle. They watched Clay vanish into the trees, wolves following, howls fading. The clearing fell into a brutal, shaken quiet. Bodies lay in the trampled snow. 2 wolves near the corral, the wounded man crawling away, leaving a red trail. The horse was still. Margaret's breath came in sharp bursts. "Did we win?" Jonas looked around. "We survived. That's the only kind of winning I count up here." Days later, when Jonas finally went down to Deadwood to trade, Margaret insisted on going with him. "Town needs to see I'm not a ghost," she said, "or a rumor. I'm a wife who walked back in on her own 2 feet. He didn't argue. They rode in together, faces turned toward the boardwalks and swinging saloon doors. Conversations stopped as they dismounted. Eyes tracked them. Clay Harrow was there, leg wrapped, face pale. He leaned against a post, watching with a mixture of hatred and fear. "Thought the wolves would have you by now." He sneered. Margaret faced him directly. "They tried. So did you. Mountain kept me, and so did my husband." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. The town marshal stepped forward. "Clay," he said slowly, "heard you went up there stirring trouble. Drove wolves straight at that man's cabin. Got one of your own boys chewed up for it." Clay's mouth twisted. "It's her. Wherever she goes—" "Enough," the marshal snapped. "I've buried enough men this year without adding you for starting fights you can't finish." He looked at Margaret, then Jonas. "You two had any more trouble up there, you send word." "Wolves or men?" Jonas nodded. "Appreciate it." Clay spat in the dust, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. "Town's cursed as long as she breathes." Margaret stepped closer, close enough for everyone to hear. "I buried 2 husbands, Clay. You know who sat alone with both those coffins? Me. You know who kept breathing when everyone expected her to die of grief or gossip? Me. That's not a curse. That's survival. Big difference." Someone in the crowd, an older woman who ran the bakery, said quietly, "Maybe the curse ain't on her. Maybe it's on anyone who tries to break her and fails." Laughter, uneasy but real, flickered around the edges of the group. Clay's face darkened. He limped away, suddenly small under the sun. Jonas glanced at Margaret, pride clear in his eyes. "You want to go home?" She took his arm. "Let's." They rode back into the Black Hills, wind cool on their faces, the town shrinking behind them. By the time they reached the cabin, evening was drawing in. The door creaked pleasantly, the fire was quick to catch, and the air filled with the familiar smells of wood smoke and stew. Jonas set a hand on the doorframe, looking around with quiet satisfaction. "We did it," he said. "Did what?" she teased. "Survived dinner? Survived a winter, survived wolves, survived Deadwood, built something that belongs to us, not to anyone's story but ours." Margaret stepped close, fingers brushing the smooth groove in the table where they'd spoken their vows. "I was sold as a black widow," she said softly. "Now I'm standing here as your blessed wife, not because the town forgave me, not because the mountain decided I was pure, but because we chose each other and kept choosing, every ugly day." Jonas cupped her face, calloused thumbs gentle. "That's all blessing is, far as I can tell. Choosing, and not running." When everything out there says you should. Outside, a lone wolf howled far off, the sound thin and distant now. Margaret listened, unafraid. "Let them sing," she murmured. "We've got our own story." Jonas kissed her, slow and sure, the way a man kisses his future, not his fear. The fire crackled, the mountain watched, and inside that small, stubborn cabin in the Black Hills, the cursed widow and the lonely mountain man, now each other's blessing, settled in for whatever wild thing came next. If you made it this far into Margaret and Jonas's story, I want to hear from you. Do you think Margaret is truly cursed, or is her curse just people's fear and gossip twisted into a story? Comment "cursed" if you think there is something supernatural about her, or just human if you think she's simply a survivor in a cruel world. And if you want more Wild West love stories with danger, wolves and stubborn hearts, hit that like button. Subscribe and tell me in the comments what kind of couple you want to see next in the frontier.